You and Davy Allison became good friends.
Oh, yeah.
How did that relationship start?
Well, we raced against each other in the Busch Series a little bit, and then once we got into Cup Series, there was a race at Rockingham late in the day. I was driving for Haas late in the day, and me and Davey and Alan Kowicki and Benny Parsons were all running in a bunch. And late in the day at Rockingham, you're looking right into the sun going into turn one. And, Davey just drove all over me, getting in the corner. Just drove all over me and wrecked me, wrecked all of us. Davey hit the wall hard. He was, partially knocked out when I got to him. And I got over there, and I just gave him a big cussing. Man, I just cussed him up one side, down the other. And he was groggy. He said he don't remember me cussing him. But believe it or not, when he came back to apologize, that's him and I, then our friendship started. And we would travel together. We were at the track. We would go to dinner every night together. We just became great friends. And
what's your best Davy Allison story?
So the best Davy story absolutely cannot be told. But
it's just between me, you, Steve, and a few thousand listeners.
A great story about Davy was the night him and Kyle wrecked for the win at the All-Star race.
Oh yeah.
And they took Davy to the hospital, and I called him, and he said, "Don't bother coming over. I'm good. Don't worry about it. I'm fine." I said, "Well, look, if you need anything, call me. And you're welcome to stay here, so you don't have to go back to Hueytown and all that." He called me about 5 in the morning. He said, "Come get me. I'm checking out." I said, "You sure you're going to be okay to check out?" "Yeah, I'm checking out." I said, "Okay." So I pulled up to the hospital, and there he was. And I said, "Okay, we want to go to the house?" He said, "No, I'm starving. Let's go get something to eat, man. I got to have something to eat." I had a hot tub at my house, and he laid in that hot tub all week.
Wow.
Getting his muscles back in order. But, yeah, let me tell you, that boy could eat. He could put a feed bag on.
I hate skinny people.
I know, and that ticked me off because he was always so skinny, and he'd eat twice as much as me when we go out to dinner.
You moved over to King Racing in 1990, where you were driving for Kenny Bernstein. And from everything that I've heard, I don't know that I had a whole lot of contact with him. He's a pretty intense guy. What was your experience like driving for him?
Well, the experience for driving for the team was fantastic. Larry McReynolds was the crew chief. Lou LaRosa was the engine builder when I went over there. Really buttoned up race team. You went there and you could see the difference between Bud Moore's way and a little bit more modern way of how to prep cars and how the whole system was run. And the good thing was Kenny was never there.
Right.
He was drag racing
and
living out in California. He'd show up about once a month, and he'd make a pass through the shop and get it all turned upside down with his mannerisms and his ways, and then he'd leave, and Larry and I'd have to get it all put back together again. And that was life. We were driving for Kenny, but you could never question Kenny's intensity on wanting to do good. He was driven to run up front, whether it was his Budweiser King race team or his Quaker State race team. He had the IndyCar team there for a little bit and sat on the pole at Indianapolis with it. He was determined as a racer to be the best.
Yeah.
And, to come out and win in our seventh race at Wilkesboro, that was fantastic. That's what we expected ourselves to do. I went to a track that I didn't run for beans with Bud with that rear steer car, and we went up there and won. So that was big for me. Obviously big for me for my first Cup win, and as it turns out, my only Cup win. But to go there and win with a new team right away, pretty important.
So North Wilkesboro, April 1990. people still talk about that race. Now, make the case that you did win that day, and everybody who thinks you didn't win should just hush.
Yes. Well, and what you said, they should just hush because it's on film. It's proven because of the TV broadcast that we won the race.
Yeah.
So as the race unfolded, we did not qualify well. We qualified back in the 20s. So we were playing catch up most of the day, and we got ourselves up in position to where we were about, half a lap behind the leader. Dale was leading, dominated that race pretty much most of the day. But we were a half a lap behind him most of the race. It would shake out that way. But you got to remember, back then, lead lap cars would line up in the outside lane. Lap down cars would line up in the inside lane. So if you're fifth on the track, you're 10th in line. Well, you put new tires on the cars that were a lap down, and they will race the dog poop out of you trying to stay it to the front. Well, Dale would break loose, and then the rest of us would have to battle to get by them lap cars. And they were good lap cars. So anyways, it would always work out to about a half a lap before I would get out of the mix. And so come down to we're getting ready to make our last pit stop of the day. It's going to come under green. And, Larry McReynolds is a pretty smart guy. And we had talked about it the night before in our race strategy. One of the plans was we might have to take a chance and pit early to get new tires on, because you were making up a second half a lap. So if you're on a 24-second lap, if you're a half a lap down 12 seconds, if you can get them on for 10 laps, you've made up all your time. So we pitted early. And we were kind of, I'm going to say, well, I'm not saying we were off the radar screen, but because we were always at half lap down, it didn't look like we were a contender. He was more, Dale and Kurt Shelmerdine were more intrigued with Darrell Walter. And where he was running. So we pitted, and we got about a 6-lap head start on these new tires with them. Well, our team cranked off the pit stop of their careers. Absolutely, it was flawless. I mean, absolutely the fastest one we'd ever done, and I'm not so sure at the time wasn't the fastest ever done. And again, that was documented on TV.
That's right. I saw that. I had my clock on you guys for some reason. And you pitted early, and I just looked at it and I said, wait a minute.
Yeah.
They just pulled off this lightning fast pit stop.
Yes, we did. So when I came off the end of pit road, I'm a lap down because of the way it worked out. A few laps later, I'm hauling ass, man. I got new tires on and I'm cranking it. And we were running some lap times. A few laps later, Dale pits. Well, they show his pit stop, and I think they even had a problem, if I'm not mistaken. I think they might have stuttered a bit on their pit stop. But it shows when he comes off of pit road, which dumped into the groove at turn 1, I went right by him. So if you think about what just happened, I just passed him for the lead.
For the lead or to get back on the lead line?
No, for the lead.
Okay.
Because
All right.
we both made our pit stop, so we had sat on pit road basically the same amount of time. So I made up my half lap and was just passing him for the lead.
Gotcha. Okay. All right.
The next lap, the yellow comes out. Elmo Langley, the pace car driver, God rest his soul, great man. He picked up Dale Earnhardt as the leader. So I go around to the back of the field, and at that time the scoring was hand scored.
Yeah.
And every 10 laps, you ran 10 laps, they held your card up so the lead scorer could get a rundown every 10 laps. Very accurate 10-lap rundown. My score is the only one holding the card up. I was a lap ahead of the field because they didn't pick me up. I'm at the back of the field, one lap ahead of everybody.
Who was your scorer? Do you remember?
No, I do not remember.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't remember. So Morris Metcalf, he realized we had a problem, and he scienced it all out, as Morris was very capable of doing back then. And The pace car waved everybody by, and they lined up behind me, and we restarted the race. And to this day, Darrell Waltrip continues, and I know Dale Earnhardt would too, but Darrell Waltrip has got terrible sour grapes over this race for a couple reasons. It was the only year he didn't win a race. That ended his streak of not winning races that year. But as I say to Darrell, you had 85 laps to pass me, and you couldn't even keep up. You didn't run second. Dale Earnhardt ran second.
Good for you.
Amen.
Amen.
Preach, Brother Brett. Preach. Brett, July 1993, we did lose Davey, and because you were so close, is there any way to put into words how difficult that was for you personally?
I begged him not to buy that helicopter.
So did his father.
I begged him not to buy that helicopter. I said, Dave, you don't need that thing. Oh, it'll be fun. I can go over to test it back and forth to Talladega, stay at home, and when we race Talladega, get back and forth, go to the hunting cabin, go to the beach. I said, David, don't get the helicopter, man. He got the helicopter. And thankfully, no one else was killed. You know, darn near took Krista with him in that helicopter that day, and Liz and him decided not to because they wasn't sure how long he was going to be. Neil Bonnet was testing at Talladega, and
Right.
him and Red jumped in the helicopter and off they went.
Had you ever ridden with him?
No.
Okay.
Nope. And I don't think I ever would have
Yeah.
if that hadn't happened. I don't like helicopters. Don't like them with inexperienced pilots particularly. And that's what I told him. I said, you are not ready. You've done all the training and everything, but you're not ready. You're a very good airplane pilot, but you're not a very experienced helicopter pilot. And but he made a mistake, and we lost him. And I'd smack him if I could. I will someday. I will see him, and I'll smack him. But yeah, lost my buddy.
Brett, you probably know what's coming next, but is there a question about the 1994 Brickyard 400 that you haven't been asked and that you've always wanted to answer?
No, because I think I've been very forthcoming with my position, and that 6 seconds from turn 3 to turn 4, I made the very worst racing decision of my career, and that was to go over in turn 4 and spin my brother out. That absolutely the worst decision I ever made. I made some bad ones, but that was the worst, and I can't take it back. I can't put us back in that race where we were running and have a redo. If some genie would give me a wish, that would be it, to have a total redo. But I hate it. I hate it for Jeff. He was a struggling team owner, trying to keep his deal together, and I just hated that happened. I hated that I let numerous outside sources pressure me get me into the mindset to have me go do that. I was in a bad personal positions at the time, and it's been documented there was trouble within the family with Jeff and me and our spouses and our significant others and all that. And I think both of us are guilty for letting those outside sources influence us. But I'm the guilty one for letting it in doing something that wasn't appropriate.
Because of that, even though you finished second, I think, in the Brickyard, you weren't able to enjoy it. How the process of mending the fences come about?
So Steve, you're so right. It was a great finish. I was at the time I was a lame duck driver. Kenny had already informed me that I wasn't coming back in '95. So it was good for me that we ran well all day. We weren't just a one-up, pit stop decision that got us there. We were good all day. We were good all weekend. And you're right. I couldn't stop running through my mind that visual of me running in the back of them.
Yeah.
And then of course the news played it up and everything that followed. It was a great day for our race team, great day for our sponsors. Not so much a great day for Brett Bodine.
I don't know how to really phrase this, but I know the fences got mended. What was the process? Do you remember? I'm sure you remember.
So we attempted right away. Our cousin, Randall Stone, was a minister in Odessa, New York, just across the lake from Watkins Glen. And he invited both of us to come to his church and sit down and talk. So after the practice and qualifying, we both agreed to do it. We went over to the church. And I could tell Jeff was still upset. And let me just regress a little bit to prior to practice. NASCAR pulled us both in the trailer. And as they do today, when there's trouble with anybody, they pull them in there. Well, they pulled us in 5 minutes before practice started.
They knew what they were doing.
Yeah. So the cars are out there practicing, and Jeff and I are rehashing this with Mike Helton and Gary Nelson. And Gary asked us both, so what happened? And Jeff said, I don't know, I got him loose going into 3 and went over 4 and he ran over me. Gary asked me, well, what do you have to say about it? I said, well, I got run into going into 3 and I went over into 4 and I run into Jeff. And at the time, I didn't have the same feelings I have today about it. I still was pretty fired up. And I said, it wasn't my fault he couldn't hang on to it.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, so anyways, so we practice qualify. We go over to my cousin Randy's church, and I could tell Jeff wasn't in the mood for this. He did it because Randy reached out to us, and it lasted about 2 minutes. Jeff walked out. Today, I get that. I understand. Man, it was hard for him. His team needed that. He was the favorite to win that race. They were on Hoosier tires, the first big square off of Hoosier Goodyear. I was on Goodyear tires, and that was a big deal. If Hoosier could win in the Hoosier State, they put a lot of resources behind that. Jeff tested there a lot. I can't imagine the huge letdown. So that was the first. Then our father passed away, and we went through all of that process of the family getting together, and the mourning, and then of course the funeral process and the planning for that, and I will say we handled it as good as we could have handled it. We put it all aside, but it didn't go away, and finally, I'm going to say about a year later, we both got contacted by the Oprah Winfrey Show.
Really?
Yeah.
I remember this.
She was, they were going to do a whole week-long series on sibling rivalries.
No kidding.
I remember.
And that was the first time we got back together.
So you were actually on the Oprah show?
We were on the show.
I remember.
We did it from location from Mooresville
Okay.
at Jeff's lake house. But that's the first time him and I sat down, talked, hugged each other, had our reconciliations, and it's been great ever since.
How did you end up with Junior Johnson in '95? You
So-
had driven for him previously.
Yeah, so that whole thing, I did drive 2 races in relief of Terry Labonte, and not that I'm just going to say NASCAR records are wrong, but they're wrong. He got that award for all those Ironman and all those consecutive races. Well, 2 of them aren't his.
He took the car out on the pace lap.
He left pit road, unbuckled, basically. He had the straps laying over his shoulders, unbuckled, and pulled right back down pit road, and I got in and started last.
Yeah, and he never took the green.
Never
That
took
was
a green
just the
flag
pace.
lap.
Okay,
Yeah, there was a loophole in the rule.
Right, yeah.
I think the rule said attempt to start the race, and Junior said, well, that's an attempt to start the race. He took the pace lap.
Yeah.
He attempted, and he couldn't make it. He pulled right back down pit road, and I got in and drove it to an 8th place finish at Wilkesboro and a 9th place finish at Bristol.
Yeah.
So my first 2 Cup races were top 10s
Yeah.
that I don't get credit for. That's okay. It was a great experience.
Well, that's okay.
I got-
Darryl doesn't get credit for North Wilkesboro,
That's
so
right.
you're even.
He gets credited for 3rd, not even 2nd. So got to drive that experience with Junior, and there's a cute story to that. So I have to go up and get fitted in the seats, but Terry and I are pretty close. I knew it wasn't going to be a big deal, right? So they give me tour Junior Johnson and Associates. Well, I'd never been to Junior's place, and so they get me over to the engine shop and show me all the. And that was the building behind Floss's at the time.
Yeah.
That was before the big addition on across the creek, and walking through there, and they introduced me to this older gentleman. He'd been with Junior probably since the moonshining days and tuning engines for him, and he said, I'd never thought I'd see a damn Yankee driving for Junior Johnson.
What was his name?
I remember. I know who he's talking about.
That was the guy that Darryl Waltrip mentioned.
Darryl
Was it
talked
Bud
about.
Allman?
Yeah, he said.
It might have been.
Mike, he said, Junior told Darryl, you gotta go make friends with him.
Yeah.
And
That's probably the same guy.
They sat
Oh, wow.
down.
Okay.
they sat down and had some moonshine.
Yep. So Budweiser was leaving Junior, and how I got with him, and Sports Marketing Enterprises, which was the sports marketing side part of R.J. Reynolds at the time, had sold Lowe's on motorsports, NASCAR, and was teaming Lowe's and Junior Johnson, a perfect match. Lowe's, a North Wilkesboro or a Wilkesboro company, and
Right.
Junior, and I mean, what a story. And so they started interviewing drivers, and I was in the short list. Never been quite interviewed the way I was for that job by psychologists. Oh yeah, I got interviewed by psychologists and
To go drive for Junior Johnson.
well, for drive for Lowe's,
Lowe's.
Yeah,
represent Lowe's.
okay, I got you. Okay,
You know.
yeah.
It was so obviously I passed all the tests and I got picked as the driver, 1995.
At what time did purchasing that team become an option?
About a month after Junior got the biggest fine in the history of the sport for the cheating at Daytona prior to the Daytona 500. One of the reasons I went with Junior was because he had such an awesome super speedway program. I wanted to run so good at Daytona, Talladega. I knew Mike Beam and I could figure the rest of the racetracks out. But I just wanted to be in a car that, I mean, he was dominating the speedways at the time. Spencer had won the year before. Bill Elliott had won. I mean, they were kick ass on the speedways, and I wanted to be part of that. So we go down to Daytona for the Daytona 500 with the Lowe's as a sponsor. Man, we're looking good. Every practice, we're the fastest car, and I'm just thinking we're gonna sit in the front row for the Daytona 500. This is no question we're gonna be on the front row. Put the car through in the tech line for qualifying, and our PR guy comes over to me and says, "You better take your uniform off and get out of here, we just got thrown out. I said, what are you talking about? And they just disqualified us. We're not going to be able to qualify. You want to talk about heartbroken.
Yeah.
You know, they had a trick manifold, and somebody must have squealed on them because they went right to it in tech. And so needless to say, things didn't start off very well. We went downhill quick. We had to use a provisional to start the race. We were so slow, and it was bad. Rebounded, we, started running pretty good, but we were tore down every single race. Yeah. After the race was over. No matter where we finished, we were tore down. Well, we had about a 5 or 6 race run, then we had a weekend off. I had a condo at Daytona Beach, and I went down there and I called up Bill France. I said, I take you out for a hot dog for lunch? So we went to lunch, and I said, Bill, please stop. Please stop tearing us down. You're killing the guys. They're the last ones out of the garage every single race. You're not doing anything to Junior. He's off on his plane, and he's sitting at home before we even leave the racetrack. It's you're not getting to him. If you want to get to him, get to air traffic control and run him all around the country. I don't know, but leave my guys alone. Yeah. He said, I hear you. And it stopped. But man, it was tough. It was tough. And you asked, when did it become right then? Because when you took ingenuity working away from Junior, you took the sport away from Junior. He was losing interest fast. Just had started a wonderful family, young children. He knew what he needed to do, and I had been told, and I noticed people coming in that were strangers looking the place over. So I made a pitch to him. I said, look, if you're thinking of selling this place, I want to be considered.
That's what he said. He said it's hard, wasn't it?
Yeah, and that's okay.
Yeah.
What he had meant to the sport and what he had accomplished in the sport, that's okay. So fortunately, Lowe's stuck with me. In 1996, I was listed as we were listed as the team owners, and Lowe's was still our sponsor.
Was there ever a point that year in 1996 where you maybe felt like you were drinking from a fire hydrant, or were you pretty comfortable as an owner driver?
In 96, we were good. We were okay.
Yeah.
Lowe's was a great sponsor. We did miss a show at Martinsville. We tried a new brake package, and it miserably failed on us. And in the short time we got to try to get ready for the race to qualify, I missed the show. And you want to talk about someone who's mad. For me to miss a show at Martinsville, I was mad. That was awful. And that was our one big struggle. We struggled that weekend, but all in all, we did okay until Lowe's told me they weren't coming back. And that was my first feel like I was drinking from a fire hydrant. Our sports marketing enterprises found me a new sponsor. We announced it in Atlanta. Close call prepaid phone cards. They were to be sold in convenience stores and the like, and it was a fantastic contracted deal for me. It was more money than what Lowe's was. Man, I enjoyed the winter. It was great. The off season, couldn't wait for that first check to come. And in January, we had a big announcement at the Winston Cup preview. A close call decided they were going to also sponsor a Top Fuel dragster, a funny car, and a drag bike.
Are you still waiting on that check?
So the check was due the Wednesday before the preview, and it showed up. We had a dinner, and the gentleman handed me the check personally. The problem was it wouldn't clear the bank, and that check was for $1 million. Your first $1 million check is no good from your brand new sponsor. That's when I felt like I was in the middle of the ocean by myself. It was tough. went to T. Wayne Robertson, told him what happened. So he got the other team owners together. He said, look, what do you want to do? You want to drop it right now? Drop this guy? You got legal right to drop him. Or do you want to stick it out and hopefully maybe he'll get himself right? Well, I didn't see another option. You're not going to pick a sponsor out of the trees in January when you got to be in Daytona in February. It ain't going to happen. I said, well, we got to stick it out. Wayne, if you thought enough of this guy and his company that he could do it, it took about till April to make that $1 million worth, and then he's another $750 behind, and then it took to July to get that $750 good, but now he's another $1.5 million behind. It was that way all year. And finally, the second Dover race, he was another just short of $1 million behind. And he dribbled you 50 grand here and 50. Man, it's tough to race.
Oh, yeah.
Without, you don't know what your budget is. You don't know what you got. That's, it's tough. So during this period of time, I'm liquidating personal assets to backfill. So Dover qualifying day, he had promised me $700,000 going to hit my bank Friday. Got done qualifying, called the office. What's the deal? I said, Brett, there's nothing in the bank. So I got a hold of ESPN, was broadcasting the race. I said, if you guys can be here when the garage opens tomorrow, there's going to be a story. Yeah. We backed that car out of the garage and we started peeling the decals off. I knew the only way I could get my word out that I needed a sponsor as fast as possible was to do that. Of course, I was going against the contract, but I needed to get the story out.
Well, that contract had already been broken long before.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But he had something against me now, know. So anyways, we backed it out, peeled it off. ESPN covered it in the race, and it worked. I got a call from a gentleman on the West Coast that had Ralph's Grocery Store as a potential. So it worked.